To say we've gotten a lot of rain recently would be an understatement. Right now it's a break in the weather, but we're in the middle of a massive rain event where we are getting 8 to 10 inches just over a handful of days. And luckily I designed my garden, or tried to design my garden, with rain events in mind. So I wouldn't be worried about muddy paths or for fear of my plants drowning. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video: how to think about rain and set up your garden for success and not total failure. Rain is a valuable resource. It's free irrigation, and without it, it's pretty hard to garden. Just ask anybody who is trying to garden in a drought or an arid climate. But too much rain, especially at once, will cause you a lot of problems. When I think about rain, I'm thinking about how can I slow it down, spread it out, and soak it in. Behind me is my in-ground garden. And right down the center here, you can see this path, this nice, looks like a ditch, because that's essentially what it is, that is filled with water. My whole garden, or this whole side of my property, is on a hill like this. And I knew that I was going to experience washout when I had rain events. So every single one of my pathways, I'm in a pathway right now, this, little river of water is a pathway, are dug down to channel water through the pathway and not over my rows. So that's one of the first things of designing, little ditches or causeways to carry water away from where you don't want it to be. Now, my little ditch pathways help move water across my garden, but what if I wanted to slow down and hold on to that water a little bit more? Well, then I would start thinking about swales and berms. And this pathway that I'm walking on right now is actually a swale. I dug it out down through here because the hill is going this way, and down through this path right here is actually an impression that then holds on to that water. And I have the start of what it would be called a berm, but I need to work on it. And that would be on the back side of the swale, a mass of soil or logs or other things that are mounded up that then help soak in that water and prevent it from going down the hill. So a swale is a ditch that is on contour, and then the berm is the backstop behind it. So that's something that you could use to slow down and soak up water. And all of my pathways are mulched. One, because it does help with weed pressure, even though I've got some lovely spring weeds that I need to be getting out of here. But at the same time, it helps it not be an absolute muddy mess. We've had 5 inches of rain, and I'm walking right through my garden right now and not making a mucky mess. So if you have access to wood chips, ideally free wood chips, I just got a brand new chip drop and a whole lot of wood chips that I'm going to be fixing a lot of my rows that have broken down over time. And that breaking down is good. It's helping build up that mycelium network and the microorganisms so you can make your pathways work for you and enrich your soil. But if you have the option of adding wood chips, I love them, because if it was something bare or even like grass, with all this rain, it would still be an absolute mud pit. And if you're in a heavy rain area, you might want to consider raised beds. You can see my covers have blown off from all the wind and storms we've had. And while I don't always love the idea of raised beds, in a heavy rain area, they can be good for getting the plants elevated and increasing drainage. But you don't have to have a raised bed like this made out of wood. There's a few different ways that you can do it. These beds right here are technically raised beds. They're higher than the natural soil because I've been adding compost and other amendments, building them up. But rather than using boards, I've just used logs. And at the same time, I've terraced them by putting these breaks on contour that help slow the water as it moves down and provides better drainage. And now back in my in-ground garden area, while I have my wood chip paths, all of my rows are elevated and mounded up, because as I dug out the paths, I added that dirt to the row that was next to it. I've also added compost, things to build it up so it is higher. So it's elevating it off to help with that drainage, and then as it moves down the path, this is the This is the, I guess, best and worst path because it's completely washed out, but it has helped move water down through there where I'm only losing wood chips and not my good soil structure that I've been building. And then of course there's rain catchment, not the type of actually catching it and holding it in the ground, but in some sort of tank. I have plans, which you can tell me if you think they're crazy or not, but right here is my old septic system. My new one is right in front of me right here. This tank right here is 1,500 gallons and it's not being used. So I plan to sterilize this thing and then route my downspouts into it to be water catchment. On the other side of my house, I'm going to use IBC totes, which are, clean, sterile, and maybe not as insane as using a septic tank. What do you think? Do you want to see that video? You want to see the results? I think it'll work. And sometimes you're just going to have wet areas. And if that's the case, maybe consider building a rain garden, an area where you want it to be nice and wet and to hold water. Right here is a rain garden area that I have been building out. Partially it does collect all the rainwater from the hill, but actually my fancy septic system, which has filtration and UV sterilization, actually comes out right here. And then with that, think about the plants that you're going to be putting in here. So I have swamp milkweed, I have a type of common rush, I have these irises right here, which absolutely love having wet feet. I've got button bushes that I just planted. So this right here is my little wet rain garden area. So sometimes, rather than fighting the wet areas on your property, embrace them for what they are. And then I have some final cautions. If you have very wet soil and you are someone who tills, do not till your ground, especially if it's clay, if you have a very wet spring, because that is totally going to destroy the soil structure and it's going to turn that clay into essentially pottery clay. And when it dries out, you're going to have no air in there and it's going to be solid. You're going to have a lot of problems. So don't do that. And then if you're designing berms and swales and moving water away from your property, make sure you don't flood your neighbor's property, especially if you're in a residential area close to others. I don't really have that problem because of the hill that I'm on. It seems like all of the other neighbors' water ends up in my yard, not because of anything that they did, just the topography, but definitely be conscious of where that water is going if you're moving it away and off of your property. The best thing to do, as I said, is to slow it down, spread it out, and soak it in. Recharge it into the groundwater, into the soil, rather than having your downspouts connected to the sewer system and sending it off to be very costly, filtered and purified, and then back out into maybe a local waterway or something. Put it back where it's supposed to go, into the ground, feeding and watering your plants. So this is my video. It wasn't the video that I was originally planning to make this week, but with all of the rain, I didn't have a lot of time to work on the various projects. But then I thought, hey, let's use this. Let's use this opportunity to show some of the things that I've done in my garden that are working. And some things that I probably need to do a little bit better on. This path has washed out, so I'll need to be fixing that, going in and digging it. I've got a wet spot right over where my dog is currently. Looks like she's eating out of the compost bin, which is a whole other thing. Watch my video on compost. But that area right there is a mucky mess. So I need to either figure out how to keep water, divert it from this hillside down and around that, move the compost, and maybe just embrace that as another rain garden spot. I don't know, but that's the trouble spot. So I haven't got everything figured out, still working on it, but I have spent a lot of time when it rains outside, walking around in the rain, just seeing where is the water going? How can I divert it? Bring it away from where I don't want it to be and to where I want it to be, where I can hold on to that water and make use of it, and not just have it wash across my property and wash away my soil and all the other stuff that I've worked so hard to create. So if you like this video, please let me know. Thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment if you have any questions about any of the things that I've talked about that maybe you want a little bit more in depth. This was a video with like a lot of different points at a very surface level. If you want to deep dive on any of these things, please let me know, and I would be, interested in doing it. I love deep dives, but sometimes they're, oftentimes, all the time, they're much harder to make. My name is Tyler Lloyd, and I wish you the very best. See you later. Bye.